But first, we have a very special edition of Bad, featuring our teacher and mentor, Professor Richard Wolff. And Matt, do we have the bad sound ready? Oh, please put on your headphones for this, Professor.
Believe me, not good.
Oh, well, he's
no
also
good,
going to...
really bad for you. Not good. Believe me, not good. No good, really bad for you.
Do you want to put on your headphones to hear the Milton Friedman clip? Or you can play it out loud. All right, so we have an old clip of Milton Friedman on greed. And we just wanted to play it. He's on Phil Donahue. And we'll see how much we could stomach. And then Professor Wolff is going to respond to a historic edition of Bad featuring Milton Friedman.
When you see around the globe the maldistribution of wealth, the desperate plight of millions of people in underdeveloped countries, when you see so few haves and so many have-nots, when you see the greed and the concentration of power within, did you ever have a moment of doubt about capitalism and whether greed's a good idea to run on?
Well, first of all, tell me, is there some society you know that doesn't run on greed? You think Russia doesn't run on greed? You think China doesn't run on greed? What is greed? Of course, none of us are greedy. It's only the other fellow who's greedy. The world runs on individuals pursuing their separate interests. The great achievements of civilization have not come from government bureaus. Einstein didn't construct his theory under order from a bureaucrat. Henry Ford didn't revolutionize the automobile industry that way. In the only cases in which the masses have escaped from the kind of grinding poverty you're talking about, the only cases in recorded history are where they have had capitalism and largely free trade. If you want to know where the masses are worst off, it's exactly in the kinds of societies that depart from that. So that the record of history is absolutely crystal clear that there is no alternative way so far discovered of improving the lot of the ordinary people that can hold a candle to the productive activities that are unleashed by a free enterprise system.
But it seems to reward not virtue as much as ability to manipulate the system.
And what does reward virtue? You think a communist commissar rewards virtue? You think a Hitler rewards virtue? You think, excuse me, if you'll pardon me, do you think American presidents reward virtue? Do they choose their appointees on the basis of the virtue of the people appointed or on the basis of their political clout? Is it really true that political self-interest is nobler somehow than economic self-interest? You know, I think you're taking a lot of things for granted. And just tell me where in the world you find these angels who are going to organize society for us. Well, I don't even trust you to do that.
Wow. Well, dunked and owned. Professor Wolff, this is the best they had. What's your response?
Well, every time I listen to Mr. Friedman, I close my eyes and I say to myself, there's the living proof, or it was living proof, that the Nobel Prize is not given to anybody except if they toe the line. He got a Nobel Prize for telling us that greed is the engine of human behavior, that human beings pursue their own self-interest. This is a man who presumably has a modicum of education. If he did, and I must wonder listening to this kind of drivel, what the world, did he never understand psychology? For 100 years, psychologists have explained to us with empirical studies and theoretical work that human beings are bundles of contradictions, that what is my self-interest is something I only dimly perceive, and moreover, many of the things I'm interested in contradict one another. I both like and don't like people. I both am drawn to and repulsed by this thing. I want that, but I don't really. I went and I got that, and now I wonder, having consumed it, why did I ever do that? Because I didn't like it at all. We are not some kind of calculus machine.
This is
that
the first noble
pursues-
truth of Buddhism. This
Yeah, it's
constant
just
state of dissatisfaction.
Silly. This mechanical no. We're here pursuing our self-interest as if we knew what it was. Human beings don't know, and they're changing all the time. So even if they know, their knowledge is out of date within moments of having conceived the idea. These are not complex ideas, but they're way beyond anything Mr. Friedman can manage. And that's not, by the way, because he's illiterate or uneducated. It's because he has a job to do. And that job is to sell private enterprise. Capitalist private enterprise is the best thing, the only thing, the right thing. Just beat it over and over. Let me tell you a personal story. I was a graduate student at Stanford University many years ago. And one of my good friends who shared my distaste for capitalism, which was already developed then,
That could be your autobiography. A
right,
distaste for capitalism. by
Yes, and
Richard
he
Wolff.
came to me one day and said, "Well, I'm leaving." I said, "What do you mean you're leaving? We're in the middle of our graduate education here." He said, "Well, I got an offer I can't refuse." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "I'm going to the University of Chicago." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because Milton Friedman offered me a quantity of money I never thought I'd see to come there and finish my dissertation, working with him." And that man went on to be a professor, I think he just retired from MIT, which is a very high-level economics department. His radicalism became quiet, something he didn't give up, but he kept very quiet. So a few of us knew about it because we were his friends when he was younger. But officially, he was a Chicago boy, as they said. And I remember thinking, oh, that's where all that money that he gets from corporations then begins to develop a school. So they can go out and say what very smart of the corporations to find a Milton Friedman who will then develop this ideological kind of cohort that will go out and beat the drum. You know, there's a simple story to tell, too. He liked to go around, and when I was a graduate student, I heard him a couple times as he came through, and he would tell this story about how every time private enterprise takes something over, it's done very well, and every time the government takes it over, it's done very poorly. And I won't repeat what we've already talked about, that the evidence he used was the low profit rate, say, of airlines or of trains. And so I had to explain to my students that was the whole point. It's a subsidy of so that to say the private is high and the public is low, as if it were an outcome, misunderstands that it was the goal and the point in the first place. But then I would begin to explain to my students that, for example, in the last 30 years, many of the municipalities in Europe that privatized water, electricity, transport, gas, and so forth, have re-municipalized because the rates are too high because of what the private sector did. And so the whole empirical basis was just created by him to support this. But it also shows you that if the wind is blowing in that direction, which in the period of Mr. Friedman's ascendancy it was, corporations were becoming major players in shaping what was going on. Economics was becoming cheerleading for capitalism. The man who led that charge and who could make that the wind of the time was able to get the Nobel Prize and have many of his students also get the Nobel Prize because they were on the Nobel Committee that awarded the prizes to what they did. And it really shows you, as Marx once said, that the leading idea of any age are the ideas in the leaders of that age. And, that's right. what you have at that time. All that leadership is now dissolving. The crash in 2008 and 9, coming at the end of the neoliberal explosion, was a sign that this is not the solution to everything. This is a disaster. And so it's become harder and harder. And the people holding on in the economics profession in the United States, the leftovers, if you like, come from Milton Friedman, and they don't want to give up their positions. You have them all over the United States holding on to the economics departments, but literally dying out now, to be replaced by a new generation much more ambivalent about capitalism than these cheerleaders ever were.
You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.